Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about one of these topics that I do see come up, and it has to do with resource allocation. And you'll get a lot of guys who will say things like, well, I'll skip training my legs so that I can put more focus in my upper body and it'll help it grow faster. And I think the reason you see this misconception is because when people see advanced lifters, really advanced lifters, or lift specialists in a sport like powerlifting, like someone who specializes in the bench press and maybe doesn't squat at all. They see that and say, aha, so that's part of what they're doing. And what they don't understand is that that sort of specialization doesn't actually help you as a novice lifter. And I'm not saying that just to get guys to squat who don't squat. I'm really not saying that. It has to do with the fact that the benefits of specialization don't exist for novice and in some cases even intermediate lifters. And here's why. It has to do with minimum effective volume versus total systematic recovery. And these are things that become different for people the more advanced we get as lifters. And I mean, a perfect example, let's take someone who wants to be a bench press specialist. And we could be talking about hypertrophy or lift specialty. It really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, they're very, very similar. So what happens if someone wants to be a bench specialist? Well, in theory, once they have a really strong bench and a really strong upper body, they're capable of generating enough workloads to eat into their overall recovery ability. And squatting and deadlifting use a fair amount of recovery up, right? They use a lot of recovery, to the point to where if you're working on increasing your squat, if you are squatting enough to improve your squat, instead of just letting it stagnate, what happens? That eats into your total net recovery ability in your body. And in fact, if you're in a very advanced lifter, it could reach the point to where it will limit the amount of volume you can do in other things. Not limited, it might not push them below their minimum volume to make progress, but let's say you're training everything fairly evenly and fairly balanced, right? Everything's balanced, and you're gaining strength in your squat, bench, deadlift, your other accessory lifts, or you're gaining muscle through your whole body, because let's say you're being an upper body, you're looking at an upper body specialist relative to this. You would reach a point to where maybe if you did allocate more total training resources purely towards things to increase your bench press or increase the size of your pecs and your triceps and your upper back and things that you need to bench, that you might gain slightly faster. Is it going to be night and day difference? No, but slightly faster. But your squat and deadlift resources are eating into it. Right? They're eating into it a bit. They're preventing you from going to that next level up. Because someone who can already bench 350 pounds, they might only be able to handle, in terms of a larger context of a program, only about 10 or 12 sets of actual real benching every week, right? But what if they cut their squats and deadlifts out, or scale them back? Let's say they don't remove them, but they scale them back. What would happen? They're going to free up recovery resources through their whole system. Now, does that mean they're going to necessarily be able to do more straight benching? Probably not, because that would eventually chew their shoulders up and everything else. But it might let them do more dumbbell presses and JM presses and tricep rollouts and some weighted dips and maybe even some flies. It might allow them to start increasing training volumes for those beyond the normal. It might let them start training bench-related movements 4 times a week and 10 or 12 work sets towards that stuff in every session. It might allow them to push upwards of 30 work sets per week for some of those muscles and really maximize hypertrophy, maximize movement patterns, weak point in the training, and get away with it, right? Because they might be pushing training volumes in those things that would normally exceed their maximum recoverable ability and stimulate a little bit more growth, and it might free up enough resources to do so. And they're advanced enough that they might have a larger growth potential in terms of volume, because more novice lifters just don't need as much training volume to grow. The more advanced we get, sometimes our minimum thresholds to see new adaptation, our minimum effective volume starts going up a bit. And in some cases, our upper cap to where we could see benefits might increase as well. But we run into that balancing act of how much total recovery can they handle from the other movements. And in fact, there's a reason a lot of times we pick certain movements for stronger lifters. There's a reason I box squat. There's a reason certain coaches prescribe the sumo deadlift more than the conventional, because they're slightly easier to recover from. So we can get more total training load in with again, easier systematic recovery. So a lot of these different variations that we work in are easier to recover from, so we can get more volume in. That starts to matter the more advanced you get. And when we start talking about a specialist like that, what are we dealing with? Well, we're dealing with someone who might benefit from that. It's going to be very small. It's not like they're going to make double the gains on their bench as a result of it. But if this is someone who's been gaining 10 pounds a year on their bench, they might gain 15 pounds a year on their bench, or 16 pounds a year on their bench as a bench specialist. And they're hypertrophying those specific muscles. Furthermore, let's say they're in a weight class. Let's say they want to do bench-only meets. Well, the extra leg weights kind of could put them in the wrong weight class. All right, so that's why it's hilarious when people who don't train their legs talk about their pound-for-pound strength on the bench press. It's like, well, obviously, you trained for that, but you can't compare yourself to a real athlete who trains their whole body. That's silly, because you intentionally have made sure you have less leg muscle. That's automatically making you weigh less than someone who's bigger and stronger than you. Right? So it's silly when they compare themselves to those people pound for pound. But if you're actually legitimately trying to get a record in the bench press in your class, and let's say for your weight class or whatever you want to hit, the world record is 500 pounds, right, in the bench press. And you know that if you put 10 pounds of muscle on your legs, it might push you out of that weight class. And you're really close to getting to that record. Well, you might actually detrain your legs. You might stop squatting completely. Why? So that if you gain a little bit more weight in your upper body and more muscle, you have wiggle room so that you don't go out of your weight class. Okay, it's not that it's going to allow you to gain more muscle in the upper body, because a lot of times the noobs will say that too. They'll say, well, my training resources, like I'm wasting calories and protein on my lower body, and it's like, not really. You're using like a gram of protein a day towards your legs, towards actually building it. You know, you can eat 1 more gram of protein. You could take your 150 grams of protein a day and increase it to 155. You'll be fine. So it's funny they have that weird idea, or they think then that, well, my body's wasting resources on growing my legs, so it's just preventing my upper body from growing. That's just not true, especially not for novice lifters. And here's what that comes down to. Let's come over to that recoverable volume. Most novice lifters, their minimum effective volume to make every muscle in their body grow is usually well below their maximum recoverable volume for their whole system. We're not talking about the localized, we're talking about the system-wide. In other words, if you've only been lifting weights really hard for 9 months, right? The amount of training volume that you need to actually make every single muscle in your body grow at a pretty fast rate, or possibly even close to maximum, or even maximum, is less total training volume than you can recover from in a good structured program. So in other words, you're not dealing with the balancing act that an advanced lifter has. You're probably not going to even be physically required to squat enough to make your legs grow or your squat to go up pretty quick. That squat volume is going to actually be by itself fairly low compared to what your entire body is capable of from recovering from. So you're not actually losing out. You're not losing out. Like this is not a problem that people with 9 months of training experience have. It really isn't. And if they are running into those problems, there's something really, really wrong with their lifestyle. They're either not sleeping, they're not eating, there's some other factor at work. So to use that then as an excuse to not do that because they see really specialized advanced lifters do that, you're actually not doing yourself any favors. You're actually not helping your upper body grow any faster at all, because the amount of training volume that as someone at that level of experience needs to see the absolute highest possible growth in your upper body, your biceps, triceps, arms, shoulders, back, everything, right, is actually a very, very small amount of the total volume that your body is capable of handling. So there's just no benefit to you in doing that. There really isn't. And I think people get confused when they compare it to the more advanced lifter who specializes for a couple of different reasons. Alright guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.